because she asked us to read it. Okay.
We're having some technical difficulties there. Mike's going to jump back on.
Put you on speaker. Got your mic? Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we were just thinking maybe you were the problem, but no, but you're working good now. Okay, we have Mike, sir.
Okay, now back to where we were. Jennifer submitted something and Bruce is going to read it out for us.
This is from, and then I'm hoping I get the name right. It's Jen G. And she says, hello, I'm Jen Yi, 29-year-old Cannon Beach resident. I'm also a member of the City Council DRB. As a local nutritional therapy practitioner, yoga instructor, meditation guide, and Qigong practitioner, it would be hugely impactful to have a donation-based yoga class, nutrition workshops, and wellness workshops hosted at the Cannon Beach Elementary, especially in the rainy months. I work one-on-one with individuals with physical, emotional, and nutritional needs, and would love to host with others and have a hub for wellness in this community. You can learn more about my practices at, and it's www.jenyi, spelled JENYIH.com. I have several other 20-something instructors and practitioners that would love to come together and offer this to the community, as well as farmers, herbalists, etc. And she checked some of the spaces below, and it was classroom, gym, outdoors, and frequency of event, daytime and evening. Special requirements are equipment, open floor, and we asked her, would you like us to schedule for live presentation? She said yes, but she's ill tonight. So thank you for your comments, Jen.
Thank you. Hey, can we find Lynette Gomez? There she is. Hello.
Hey, Lynette.
Nice to see you all. Good evening. My name is Lynette Villagomez. I've spoken to you all before. I'm a member of the Greater Ecola Natural Area Group, also known as GINA, and also a Cannon Beach community member. I'm reading this statement on behalf of GINA, but also know that as a community member, I may also inject some of my personal experiences and perspectives in this statement. And also Katie Volke, who is part of GINA, originally submitted some of this statement as a GINA member, but was unable to attend. So I'm also doing some of this on her behalf. Council members, thank you for soliciting public input to help guide your decision-making and planning for the newly acquired Cannon Beach school site. Thank you for allowing GINA to once again share the vision that was created by a long process that included the input from Clatsop Nehalem Confederated Tribes, local civic organizations, national parks, community members, and city committees. This city has an incredible opportunity to showcase the deep values that have made Cannon Beach what it is. It takes constant nurturing and cultivating to keep Cannon Beach. To say to keep Cannon Beach is intentional, that Cannon Beach, could be lost if you don't know who she is, why she is, and work intentionally to always keep her. You could lose her to being just another town, just another beach town, set apart, not set apart from all the others. Cannon Beach has existed as a physical place for 4,000 to 6,000 years. Take that in, that's amazing. When it first rose out of the ocean. For the majority of that time, it has been dominated by dramatic basalt sea cliffs, such as Ecola Point, sea stacks like Haystack Rock, immense mountains covered with rainforests precipitating into the sea, creeks and streams pouring down, delivering water, sustaining life for salmon, trout, otters, elk, and people. People have lived in what we call Cannon Beach for thousands of years. And specifically, people have occupied Nakus, what we're calling the school site. That's no small thing. It's sacred and hallowed ground, and it's the birthplace for all of Cannon Beach that has come next. That is the making for a place that should be cherished properly and honored properly. Humans have often occupied and lived on sites where the river meets the ocean because of the great sustenance such this place provides. This is true of Nakus as well, also known as place where the tide goes out. The first human settlement in Cannon Beach was at Nakus. Food, medicine, trade, travel, art, song, dance, education, shelter, family, culture was all fully supported here at Nakus. In more recent times, a cultural tradition critical to any village continued with Cannon Beach Elementary School. Nurturing of the young ones with art, song, dance, interaction with the natural world, all as part of their education. For the majority of this land's existence, for thousands of years, it has provided the rich and critical building blocks for culture. It provides an anchor to a sense of place and access to bounty. The site is the gateway to Cannon Beach. It is the entrance. It is historic. It is valuable, and it is sacred. A plan for this site ought to be considered with great care, and it should be understood that the decisions you make now as a council have a lasting impact beyond your lifetime. The planning for this site's next chapter on the cultural continuum is a great privilege and a great responsibility that the city can now proudly invest in. How will this impact future generations? What is the tone you want to set for our community, our citizens, our children? How will this decision positively contribute to the history of Cannon Beach? How do we honor those who came before us? This site plan ought not be done willy-nilly, of course, it won't be, but at the whim of whoever shows up to provide input doesn't seem very equitable. A place like this, like Nakus, deserves reverence and respect, passion and vision. Land is finite, as we know, and a place such as this land is irreplaceable and cannot be replicated. Cannon Beach has the opportunity to remain unique by doing something great, innovative, beautiful, respectful, and special at its gateway. Cannon Beach is not just one of many beach towns. It has a culture of caring for place, for people, for beauty, and for celebrating the natural wonders that compel millions to visit and creates a sense of pride for those who live amongst her. There have been many fun and exciting ideas brought forth to the council for use of this site, but many of those ideas are not intrinsically tied to this site. Most can occupy any building, any site on the North Coast, really. Our duty as citizens is to honor this sacred place. What would help us define our unique character? Does the North Coast need recreational courts in Cannon Beach specifically? At this site specifically, is that what would put Cannon Beach at the top? Are these the types of facilities that would respect and revere the land for what it is, as the most sacred and hallowed ground that it is? Do these uses of facilities set Cannon Beach apart as one of the most stunning and unique places on the Oregon coast? As you take on the difficult charge of nurturing and cultivating the values of this community, please find guidance in the city's vision statement and comprehensive plan. It's a beautiful vision statement, one that can make all citizens proud to live under and care for. And I quote, "To foster a community with a strong sense of place, which provides its residents with the quality of life that they desire, the protection and enhancement of the following unique community characteristics form the basis for achieving this principle. Proximity to and interaction with the surrounding natural environment as defined by the ocean and its beach, the Ecola Creek estuary, and surrounding forested hills. Gina has responded to requests from the city time and time again. The group has asked to draft plans, give presentations, research funding, and more. Nearly a decade was spent garnering community support for the potential future of this place, of Nacoos. Days and weeks, maybe even months of people's lives, community members' lives in support of Nacoos has been dedicated to this effort. Citizens like Barb Knopp, Elaine Truckee, and Jan Siebert-Warmond, and members of the Parks Committee. You, the city, have spent tens of thousands of dollars on a draft master plan for the site. GINA members have presented to City Council through 3 city managers and at least 2 mayors. Has this time and effort been in vain? Does GINA need to take elements of the vision further to help you in your next steps in leadership for planning this at the site? If that is what is needed, GINA members are available to provide support. And we also understand that you might want to provide more at the site than is in the draft plan, and we support that as well. But above all, we ask that the city choose to create something great at the entrance of our town, something that captures the inspired and beautiful culture that has existed for thousands of years and exists today. Something that provides due respect to the past while moving into the future. It is a place of beauty and connection like no other, a place where residents can find peace and serenity, joy and beauty, and enrich their lives with education, food, medicine, song, dance, and art. A place that welcomes all who enter to take part in Cannon Beach's unique culture. I will state this again. A community with a strong sense of place, which provides its residents the quality of life that they desire, the protection and enhancement of the following unique community characteristics form the basis for achieving this principle. Proximity to and interaction with the surrounding natural environment, as defined by the ocean and its beach, the Ecola Creek estuary, and surrounding forested hills. Please create a vision for this site that celebrates and enriches culture in a way that only this site, only this place, and only this wonderful town can. Our world needs places like Cannon Beach to rise to the occasion. I am looking at the Nacoos vision right now, which was prepared for the city by GINA at the request of the Parks and Community Service Committee. And the key elements and cultural significance outlined in this document were all described last night during Dick Bash and Doug Dewar's respective presentations. We would be happy to share and circulate this and related documents with council members and city staff again. And lastly, I just want to say that the last time I spoke at this council meeting was to ask the city council and city administration to expand their awareness around inclusivity, equity, and diversity. And I personally offered to speak with staff and council members and be available as a resource. Here we are again. Here is an opportunity to be an inclusive community, to include, elevate, celebrate the story and culture, past and present of this site. Please build on the work that has been done by our community and stakeholders of this site. We have seen you take the first steps to the naming of Nacoos Park and erecting the welcoming statue along the creek. Please continue to follow the path of this vision. Please make this place, this space for community accessible to all and honor its cultural and historical importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Thanks on that.
Didn't see Joyce. I don't know if Joyce is connected back with us.
Hold on a second and I'll check. No, I don't see see her connected via phone.
Okay,
Joyce, if you're listening, text me and I'll make sure we get you on.
She wasn't sure if she was gonna speak or not, so she was kind of,
Yeah, I didn't know if she was in.
okay.
Sam, were
okay,
you
that's all of,
Were you going to read who is on?
I should do that, shouldn't I? Thank you.
Yeah, please.
The folks who are on our attendee list are two phone numbers. Barb Knopp, Betsy Ayers, Deb Attia, Donald Stasny,
Don Stasny.
Emma Molyneux, Kelly Maurer, Les Sinclair, Luann Barrett, Lynette Villa-Gomez, Tibby Aaron Vance Borland, and Trevor Mount. Sorry if I abused your names. That's kind of hard to see up there for me. But we will then move on to my presentation. Rusty. I have put together, Jeff, a PowerPoint. First, I want to just my disclaimer, this is my vision, not the council's. I present this in the hopes to initiate discussion. We have been listening to some enlightening and very attentive folks who have heartfelt emotions about this property and what we can do with it. In my process of developing this, I started with the GINA master plan, and I've adapted the change of the time, you might say, and the fact that we're looking at some other facilities and whether to keep the classroom building and all that kind of stuff. So I've altered it in that sense, but I'm hoping that I have the philosophy in line. It's going to sound probably a little overly detailed because that's the way I do things. I am creating, or I've created kind of an entire site program, but I want to present it item by item. And what I mean by item is each space within the buildings kind of has a focus to me, and that will then evolve outside into the rest of the property, NACUS and beyond, actually. So I put this together, and I also have supporting documents in the files that Jen has put on the website for some maps and some other text. So with that, Rusty. Yeah, this is all combined into one concept. Obviously, there are certain things that might be crucial, others are just kind of fun, vague ideas that I think we should talk about. My primary focus is that everything that people have brought to us are such good and valid points that it almost drives the fact that the buildings and the land must have multi-functioning capabilities. One of the hardest things to do in a structure design is to say this is one thing only. So adaptability within the spaces to me is crucial, but I also mess with that a little bit. So I will be presenting these now one by one. Rusty. This is the classroom building. We are looking at it from the sky. And I am top is south. So the farthest to the right is the red classroom number 4. That's the way they're numbered right now. My thinking is to turn this one into an art space. And I create this from many years in college where I worked in art rooms that were literally torn to pieces. They were messed up by oil paint, pottery stuff, dust, all kinds of stuff. So my thinking would be to just pretty much leave this room as it is. I would redo the walls because we need to redo the wall, the south wall, the window wall, for seismic strength. Plus insulation would be nice in there. And then just call it an art room. And it doesn't have to be just art. Anything messy could happen in there. Somebody mentioned potting plants. So that associates with some stuff that might happen outside. Somebody else actually mentioned having a space for the microplastics presentation or things like that. Somebody did mention a puppy training. I would rather not do the puppy training where there's carpet. So that's my idea for classroom 4. Rusty? Classroom 3, I would upgrade into a basic conference room. Nothing fancy, but workable. I would, and this is where I'm kind of considering, I would open a pass-through, a large sliding door type creation between this room and the next room, so that the 2 rooms could be combined into one larger room for whatever functions slightly larger might be nice. What I would do is designate this room as our environmental exhibit room. And my thinking is, one of our issues has been how to do environmental presentation during the season, during the busy seasons. So these spaces can be used for visitors that come from farther away, maybe staying the night, have a place to go and learn something specific. That could then run through the summer. And then on the shoulder season and in the winter, we can then transition it to general use. And that would mean, that's kind of what I mean by the bottom line saying semi-permanent exhibits. You can cover them up, you can move them around, but you can change the room for different functions. So Rusty, the same thing would happen in this room, but I would focus this one on the historical and cultural. Now, the reason I've separated the 2 is so that we can do them at different times. That all depends on when we get volunteers and who wants to do the presentation or the exhibits, and whether it's open to the public at certain hours. That might differ, but you still have that pass through between the 2 rooms. And I'm thinking a double door size or a little bit larger. You could do them both at the same time, which would then enhance the on-season presentation ability. This one is the room that, to me, is something that I did not hear a whole lot about during the presentations, but because of the ability to do larger events, a kitchen facility is important. I believe it was the young man from Conference Center, or their culinary school there, mentioned the fact that it would be nice to have extra kitchen classrooms. I was doing some Googling and found out that a community kitchen is very popular on the Eastern Seaboard. Who knew? Community kitchens fit Cannon Beach to me quite nicely, because we do a lot of stuff that include Christmas cookies and potlucks, and but it could also be a full-on teaching kitchen and also be a servicing kitchen for the facility itself. Go ahead and switch to the next one. I kind of laid this out. It has a ton of space. It works really well for a presentation. And I got another idea from, I don't know who's watched the British Baking Show, but they have cooking stations. That works great for students. The reason I put it in this space is primarily the plumbing. And that comes to the next room. But first, I want to also attach the fact that I've, on the south wall, made an access there that's a little easier to access. So oh, okay. I don't know if I can aim it that far, but I can try.
Should, there we go.
Oh, cool.
Push the top button and hold it.
Oh, cool. Okay, so these here say mobile workstations. Another idea for the mobile workstation is you can, again, multitask. They could also be serving stations. So they would be mobile enough to roll out and go into the gymnasium for a potluck, or roll into the classrooms to the west for an art show or something like that, for wine service. Or they can be locked into place for function facility. Obviously, this is crude. I would definitely go to our pros in town. We've got a couple of really good pros who know how to lay out a kitchen. I'm sure we got more than a couple.
They'll fight for it.
Yeah, they'll fight for it. So go ahead and do the next one. The last area is the easternmost part of this structure. This is the part that has the worst water damage. It has a requirement to do some upgrade on the eastern wall. And it is where the plumbing is already placed. So what my focus was is, could we focus all of the plumbing into one area and put a full-on restroom facility all the way through the old restrooms, through the boiler room, into the offices that were there. It is, I think, enough square footage. Obviously, we need to talk to some professionals about how much that is. I found a couple restrooms online that kind of demonstrated to me that it could be jammed into that space. Marrying the a causeway down the middle with plumbing exactly the way we do it at the downtown restroom facility, plus having the plumbing in the, in this case, the west wall, but the kitchen adjoining wall gives the plumbing again more focus. My concern is that we don't have to start doing any digging dramatically for the security of the property historically. If there's any digging that's already happened, this is the one area where it already has been focused. If we have to do some more extra digging, redoing that floor or anything like that, it's all focused in one area, and we could do an archaeological study beforehand. So nothing else would disturb the property below grade that I proposed. It would also eliminate the restrooms in the classrooms, which would allow us to not have to do too much rearranging of the entry doors, possibly reclaiming as much as we can of the old mural. That's a big if, I understand, but it would be nice to see if we could claim it as much as possible from there. It would also mean we don't need the two doors that are on the easternmost wall, the ones that go into the office and the one that goes into the boiler room could be just walled over with our new firewall. Go ahead and click to the next one. This is kind of a layout for a restroom. I was just making sure that I could get the measurements fit, and they do. This is a acceptable ADA size for a pretty good facility. As you can see, we got an ADA toilet and enough. So this is actually almost identical to what's at Home Depot. So it also, if we don't have enough room, we can still squish out the two spaces that I had reserved for a walk-in cooler and an entry to the kitchen, and we can rearrange that. That's kind of that. So, Rusty? The last item on the classroom buildings is the breezeway and the entryway. Breezeway is pretty straightforward, just needs roof work and probably some more structural beams, especially on the west end. It's rotting really bad down there. I would love to do some sort of artistic program for the downspouts. I think that would be kind of fun. And I'm thinking of what we did on the chamber building there. The columns. Yeah, the columns, they could be dressed up and made natural wood or something. But obviously that's a pretty straightforward. The entryway, on the other hand, to me is the one spot where we can make a signature architectural presentation for reclaiming this building. What I would do right now is remove what's there. Leave the breezeway part so it covers the main door into the gymnasium, but remove the upper roofs. There's damage up there, and part of it might have to be removed anyhow for sheathing the gymnasium. So why not remove it, live with it for a while, and figure out what we want that feel to develop into for a whole new entry concept. That obviously would not have to happen immediately. I would do it so it's not directly connected to the roof of the gymnasium, but that can come. That's down the road kind of thing. Rusty? Yeah, questions about the classroom building? Yep, okay, I'll move on. The big gym. I can't do that.
Sam, can you see it from here?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Upgrading the lighting. Obviously, this is pretty basic. My sense of the gym is to live with it. We need the new floor or fixing the floor or something. We need to upgrade ADA. Those are all pretty straightforward. The heating and ventilation is a mechanical program that needs investigating and a lot of research on figuring out what are the better ways to heat that building than the big oil furnace that used to be there and the gas furnaces that are currently boxes up in the sky. And studying the acoustics actually after we've figured out what the new floor looks like and stuff like that. I have a sense on the big room is to let it evolve. Get in there, start doing some stuff, and just start feeling it out. So that said, I do have some changes on the north end. The north end room, it's a hard one to describe. It was, when I was there, it was a stage underneath that little area. It wasn't a big grand stage. It was just a little kid stage, but it worked. And immediately when they put in the new floor, they got rid of that and they created a dining room in there for the kids. What I would say is to open that, obviously the lintel is still up there because there was a stage in there. Why not just see if it's still there? And see if we could open that up. That would make access to that room for storage of stuff a whole lot easier. Basically, it just helps adapt to the big room for the stuff that we might be doing in the big room. Since so many really nice input was talked about for what we could do in the big room, storage is going to be the issue for damn near everything we do in there. Chairs, tables, displays, sporting equipment, all that stuff. And I know the choir is so anxious to be in there and start listening to themselves and the echo and all that beautiful noise in there. They've asked about the possibility of storing a piano. Okay, that's a challenge, but I know we can do it. Just getting it into any one of these spots is a challenge. I think having that stage idea would be awesome. Rusty? This area is already open to the dining area or where I would propose a stage. I wouldn't do anything here but clean it up, call it a cloakroom, a green room. It's got two little closets that would be really nice, like a dressing room or a closet. Pretty straightforward on that one, Rusty. The little rooms on the east side of this area, there's 4 or 5 little rooms. And I added the little storage area on the west side, just storage. I would poke the wall away just like it is on the opposite side so that those storage areas are easily accessed. Right now, the doors into those are narrow and sharp turning things. We have to fix the floor. Self-leveling concrete would fix that up pretty quickly. Again, storage is where we're headed. Okay, let's go upstairs. The office is actually a fairly nice office, except for the fact that the window is horrible. It needs better relationship outside. It is a good office. My only concern would be is if having an office upstairs is going to be acceptable with ADA. If it's not, again, we can work out something. This is just a decent space. It would make good storage for record keeping or something like that. But I would definitely put a door to the fire escape rather than a boarded up window. There's an attic space above this space. And again, that's where I would focus my mechanicals. The power comes in right about there for electrical. The electrical wall is all on the north wall. Rusty? The loft was the library when I was in school, so I call it the library. A lot of other folks call it something else. I think we should just call it the loft. And again, this space could require ADA access. If it does, then I would just say call it storage and try and avoid putting in a bulky, expensive elevator. If we can get away with, probably not the best terminology, but if we can use it for a meeting space, it is a really nice view from the door out onto Nacoos Park and the creek. And dressing up that frontage, the facade on the outside, because it is the face you see when you drive into town. You literally you stop right at the stop sign and that's right there. So if that looked nicer, that would be very inviting, I think. Other than that, again, this space doesn't need a whole lot of change right now. I got some other ideas, but those are down the road. Rusty? This one, I think, has huge potential for the task that Kelly was talking about the most. I initially was looking at this as just storage, but it has a unique aspect of being long, narrow, and perfect for exhibits. So what I started thinking about is the parking lot, which would be to the southeast. There's 3 little parking spaces there, and the entire Beaver Street parking. If that started the Interpretive Trail and you went through this section, entering on the south and exiting on the north, you have a really perfect type of layout for side-to-side viewing. It could be permanent. It could be locked up separately from the gym. It could be open on its own schedule, not dependent on any way to what the gym is doing or any of the other facilities. It could stay there. We could enlarge the windows so it has more connection to the garden space outside. And it would then lead you directly out onto Nikus for, you get a busload of kids, you run them through here, you run them down the trail, they're on the beach, and boom, down to the rock. I don't know. Or vice versa. They could come back the other way. So that worked out to me. Also the fact that it is the side facing new visitors from town or to town. As they come over the bridge, that's the part of the building that could be dressed up enough to say, here, visit us at some point during your visit. And, you know, I don't know, that just fits so well with the idea of the interpretive, permanent interpretive center. The classrooms would have educational rooms and expanded interpretation capabilities, or not. Again, that's the multifunction. This would be the one space that I would have literally a permanent function. It could have, it doesn't serve very well as a classroom because of its narrowness. It doesn't serve very well as a kitchen. I tried to lay out a kitchen in there. It was awkward. It could be done. I'm not saying it couldn't, but it could be done. It just wasn't as forgiving as the classroom was. So it obviously could be storage. That's kind of what it's always been. So with that, Rusty? Oh, questions about the gymnasium?
I think it's good that you're talking about HVAC system, because I think we're going to be required to have more ventilation. And I think putting in a new system for that is a good idea.
Yeah, I talked to an engineer that just happened to be in the shop, and he was saying they have a fan on both sides, both ends, would just climatize that thing in a second. So that was kind of interesting.
Sam, I have a question about the gym. I guess a couple of questions. The interpretive center you're talking about for Haystack Rock?
It would be, I don't know. That's for discussion. I would say that was what Kelly presented primarily, but I think she was also thinking natural, environmental, and also historical, cultural. So I could see there's almost 75 feet of wall space, not counting the windows on both sides, that you could literally have displays. And so people can go back and forth. And I've seen railroad cars put out with really nice railroad museums in a boxcar. And you have a very well-designed flow of traffic. people aren't backing up and going, against each other, and showing a progression. So you could have historical at first, and then you go up through the process into environmental, which dumps you right into a HRAP program kind of thing. So presentation wise, I think it has a huge versatility.
And then the other question I have is, I understand that there's a little bit of a kitchen in the gym. Why not enlarge that? Why use the space in the classroom area for a kitchen?
Yeah, the kitchen in the gym was nothing more than a sink and a warming oven. They just warmed stuff that was delivered from Seaside, generally. So it's technically not really a kitchen. What I was focusing more than anything else was the plumbing. Any new plumbing would have to go down through the floor probably and chew up the floor somehow and go under the building, or at least out into NACUS, so that wherever the plumbing is accessed, I still can't find that. Been looking all over, so it's out there somewhere. The last I heard from the school district was none of the plumbing in the gymnasium worked anymore. Both the water inlet wasn't working and the sewer would always back up. So my feeling was plug them up and not worry about them. Focus all your plumbing effort in one space. Plus the fact, having this classroom become a kitchen, you had a unique learning experience. I talked to Mark briefly about cheese making. He would love to do a class kind of thing on presenting cheese making, things like that. This space behind in the gymnasium, it's about half the square footage of one of the classrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. Outdoor ideas. First one, obviously, is the gardens. There's a large, I wouldn't say a large group, but there's a very committed group to working in the gardens. These gardens could be producing gardens, flower gardens, native plants, all kinds of stuff. And I think this is a joyous space used for that. It is very obvious. It would accent what happens to the building from the view of the First Street. I would carry it along the slope that's along the sidewalk, primarily because, again, I'm thinking about the Interpretive Trail. Rusty, go ahead to the next one. The Interpretive Trail is just natural. I mean, it's just obvious that you go around the entire property. I've included a little stretch on the west side that goes to the turnaround area, just because there's trees there. The obvious trail that we still already have, that could also, let me do a little aside here. In my supporting documents, I have some supporting documents that Jenny has put on the website. I also realized that everything west of here, from the turnaround all the way almost to the creek, there's a line out there, and this, when you go to this map, you can see the property lines. That's all city property.
Sam, use the code.
Oh. Way over here. So if you were to go right there and then just keep going, oops, off the map, almost doubling the square footage. So theoretically, the city has the ability to call that all NACUS Park. So all the grassland over there is NACUS, and that wraps around to the creek in most cases. You've got Spruce Street that's running all the way through there. So the property, when we think about it, shouldn't be just the boundary that's fenced in. We should also consider what can happen to the west. And I appreciated the fact that when Dick talked last night, that area was part of what he was talking about. So the trail, let me step back to the trail. Obviously, a trail needs to be figured out and designed, and placards and interpretive things, and maybe even sculptures. Somebody mentioned a sculpture garden. I think this is obvious that the whole property could have some fun sculpture appointments and places. Another concept that was not mentioned recently, but I've heard in the past, was a handicapped accessed deck that's lower down to the water. That's concerning to me as far as our high water times, but it would allow handicapped folks to do bird watching or fishing. That's a possibility. Something else to talk about. Rusty?
About a canoe place to,
I'm gonna get there.
okay, okay.
The grove that is behind the pantry is very inviting. I'm always amazed when I walk the dogs over there to see the fact that a lot of the young folks really enjoy just hanging out in there. So that is an obvious outdoor space, either a picnic area or an outdoor classroom. I just wouldn't change it at all. Literally, I would redo the fence so it has a little more privacy from the private property just to the south. Maybe consider some other enclosing areas so that kids could run free, or that'd be one thing. Rusty? This is an actual, Bruce, you brought this up, an idea of a kiln. I did a little research. There's all kinds of kilns, there's all kinds of foundry types of facilities. My biggest concern with that was security. An outdoor kiln facility generally attracts things, and the little space that's between the food pantry and the fence to its south was a sandbox for the younger kids. It's got a little depression there right now, and it could easily be fenced, which would give us a small area for a kiln foundry if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible. I worked in a kiln when I was in college. Not in a kiln, excuse me, in a foundry where we poured bronze sculptures. And it would have needed a little bit bigger space, but it's possible. So that's just an idea. I'm throwing that one out for people to talk about. Rusty? Then this kind of came up from the GINA. They had some ideas of some burning, some land terraforming areas within the upper Nakus Park. What I've done here is scooted it over a little bit so that we keep the bulk of the field for field sports and other facility functions. And the other thing is that by berming it up on the southern edge of this green thing here, or this southern edge, right along here is the access driveway that goes in. And the food pantry folks were using that to full extent today. But if you berm it up a little bit, it makes a barrier between the park area and the cars that could be going in and out. And that also relates to my next slide. So Rusty, the venue idea is very important, both for music, but also for presentation, education, living history. This is a nice space. the little dot is what I would do to put a platform area. Getting a platform literally right next to the welcoming man, asking for a competition of design so that we have some sort of character that goes along with the platform. It could either be gazebo style, straight old, just a deck, who knows? Nothing that invasive to the soils. Just sit there. I had thought about a sound shell that could be dismounted during the bad weather season so that it's not washed away. We could pack it away and then during the summer reestablish it so that the musicians have a really nice evening show area. It also gives the audience that berm to use as a raised sort of seating area, picnic area. Rusty? This is the area where the lifeguard tower is always stored. I'm hoping that we can find a new home for the lifeguard tower. It needs some help, and that's a discussion with Public Works. But this was what I talked to a long time ago with Dick about for the idea of the canoe house. I need to talk to them some more about what they're really thinking structurally, since they do have another opportunity for a canoe house at the seaside. My immediate thinking was a longhouse replica. There used to be a replica up at Fort Stevens. It's gone now, but it was pretty straightforward, nicely done, designed perfect on the interpretive trail that we would have. And then I started looking at it and realized, oh, one side of it faces our outdoor venue. So there is a potential there to open it up a little bit and use it as both living history and venue presentation. Obviously, that needs a lot of discussion and detail work on that. That's all I have. Actually, let me just step back. When Dick was talking last night, I was thinking mostly about that because Doug's presentation on what a longhouse looked like. Immediately, I just cut the longhouse in half, had it open on one side. That way we could still have a fire pit that looked traditional and have kind of the little bench bed areas that they had along the walls. I don't know. There's some design potential there that could be a lot of fun. Okay, Christy? Okay, that's it for outdoor stuff. I do have some ideas on parking, but before that, is there any questions on the outdoor stuff?
You didn't say how large the area, the circular area would be for concert outside.
According to one of the maps that we have, again, this is in my supporting document, there's that whole lot where go back to one of the maps, Rusty. Okay. Wrong one.
Go back, you want the one with the circle, Sam?
No, well, yeah, go ahead, Rusty.
There.
See this square, the rectangle actually that's there?
Mm-hmm.
That is 100 foot this way and 188 feet this way, according to this map.
Okay.
That is enclosed by a little bit of the road on the bottom and a lot of bit of the trees on the top. But you can kind of, when you wander over there, stand by the welcoming man and pretend you're playing your guitar and you're singing to people southward and all the way to the road. So it is comparable in, I guess, the presentation space of the city park gazebo area, sort of. It's a little more focused, actually. The one thing I did like about that, I had a thought about that, and I was looking at the one in Gina, the original concept. It was more over towards the gymnasium, but it was also facing southward. And, you know, if you're in the audience in the evening, and you're trying to watch somebody looking into the sun. So this way you're looking northward.
There, you want to try to describe it?
Yeah, actually, that one is facing south, the right way. But all I did was scoot it over. It's the same idea they had there, just in the place, and I thought it was really kind of fun to be right next to the welcoming mat. Okay, let's move on. Parking is going to be an issue, I understand. I went through and just kind of did a layman's look at it. Obviously, we have to make some definitions of what needs parking, how many spaces, and all that kind of stuff. But the first thing I did, Rusty, is I looked at Beaver Street. There is one of the aerial photographs literally has cars being parked nose in on the south portion of the street. All I did was flip that around and we went nose in on the north side, and you double your parking spaces there. So just by doing that, if that's a challenge for traffic flow, we could consider actually turning Beaver and what is the other one? Alder? It's not Alder. The north-south street that connects to. Yeah, Antler. Turning that into a one-way loop. It's a one little block. It wouldn't be too dramatic, but it's a discussion. But that would give us 16 potential spaces there, giving us also some room for a signature entryway at the building so that you could have kind of a thrust out access patio. I didn't know. I mean, that's just possible. We also have rules within our street parking for green space between a number of parking spaces. Rusty? In the blacktop, it is possible to park about 40 cars there. I went over there and paced that all out. Numerically, that works. Physically, it could be, you know, we have to train people how to park cars. And what I would do is, in the case of an event, is to just make sure you have somebody who's out there directing parking. That way we could use the blacktop for the purpose that it's there for. The other issue about parking is timing. Obviously on Wednesdays, you wouldn't be able to do this because Food Pantry needs the space for their access. But on other days, you know, that's just scheduling events during times when the parking is appropriate. Lastly, keeping the open field as it is. You can do rough parking and easily get 50 there. For a peak event within the buildings. If we were to have a concert there, you could easily park 100 cars in all 3 spaces. Probably more because I didn't fill up the north east corner of the field. That field is well compacted. It's mostly sand. It drains well. You wouldn't have to do anything to worry about, you know, getting stuck in the mud or anything like that. I'd actually worry more about the driveway. The driveway being the only access is an issue. I don't know how that would go in and out. Again, the best solution for that is by directing traffic. That's just an opinion on parking. Obviously, we have to wait and see what the numbers are going to come out with and what we need, what we can get away with, and what we can manipulate and all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's the end of my thing. That's just some wrapping up stuff. The one thing to me that is the most dynamic for all of this is putting the restrooms in one spot. Otherwise, you've got little bathrooms all over the place. That's not efficient for construction, nor is it efficient for use of the facility. Having the restrooms independent and separate means any one space of the facility can be used on its own without depending on going to some other space for a restroom. The restrooms could also be kept open for today for the food pantry. So they could use it. It could be left open on certain days if we wanted to for just a general public restroom. Or not. That's the flexibility that I think is very important. In my supporting documents, I have kept track of every possible use that has been mentioned for the last 8 years to me. And that includes everything that we've heard recently. I tried to list it all out and I found they just got overwhelming. And so they're in there with most of the highlighted ones, but it's a tremendous amount of potential that can happen there. I've also delineated the list as to which are community only, which are visitor draw capability, and which are both. By both, I would mean something like a concert. A concert could be marketed to folks in Portland or Seattle, but it's also good for the community. So it is just by that quick little calculation, it is, from what I can say, easily 60 to 75% marketable use. And that does not detract from the fact that it's a unique and community-oriented space. It is mostly both. So anything we do there, if we have an art class in the art room where somebody is presenting how to do a wood carving, that can be marketed to wood carvers all over the region. And we can still have locals enjoying even teaching the class. Same thing with the kitchen, especially with the two interpretive type rooms. They would have immense capability as far as I'm seeing for multi-use stuff. The gym is the gym. It's just big and fun. I can't think of more stuff. I'd love to start thinking of more stuff to do in there. So I think that's it. Yep, that's it. I'm done. Again, there's some more supporting documents. You can read through those at your will. Good job.
Sam, where do we get your handouts?
Pardon?
How do we get your handouts?
They are on the website. We have Sam's presentation and all the attachments are at the end of his presentation. So they're on the meeting page for tonight as well as public comment on the CBE page.
Okay, great.
Okay. And remember, this is for guiding discussion. So I would love to have feedback. And if it's totally off the charts, tell me. I don't care.
Well, Sam, I'll give you some feedback.
Please.
I really like what you put together. I think makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you and I both know it needs fleshing out, but the general layout, the concept, I really do like it. I guess I like it because it fits so well with my own personal thoughts on it. I'd say the only area where I have a question or concern is the upstairs over the little stage. I think that's got to be thought through a good bit more as to how we would best utilize that space. But everything else, especially the public restroom right there where you've shown it, makes so much sense. And the interpretive center, the long room, I think it's a great idea for that, being able to walk through from the early history to sort of the current day with and right out to the nature trails. I think really quite good. So I appreciate all the thoughts you put into it.
Thank you. Obviously, I've been working on it for a while, so. And I got really inspired when Jeff started doing PowerPoints.
Yeah. See, we have a PowerPoint every time we have an idea.
Probably.
Yeah.
So I guess the question now is, where do we head for our next steps? Did you have ideas?
No, we've had, I think, 5, 6. So I think tonight is the 7th time we've had public input, and we've had 5 tour opportunities. And we've got the report that Kelly's put together. So we're at a point that the council can start making decisions. I sent you an email to talk about some of the things that I see on the horizon that we're going to need to address, which you may or may not agree with, but I'm just saying to keep those things in mind. And just what do you want to do now?
I guess the first big question is the classrooms. Because there's still some comment I'm hearing about, do we keep the classrooms in total, the expense of them, and are they worth it? Obviously, I have come to the conclusion that I think they're worth it for now. And actually more worth than taking them down and just opening that space up. That really changes the attitude of what's there. I'm not saying negatively, it just changes it, changes the whole concept of what happens in the gymnasium. Plus, this facility is got 4 nice spaces. And the comments that Jim brought us from the chamber discussion, I have some debate with those. I guess my first concept is they were quite concerned about competition. And I don't see any of this as overt competition with like Haystack Gardens or even the chamber building. If anything, this is a bonus type of space. We would be doing in the summer, if we had volunteers and we have people willing to do this stuff, to have the exhibits both in the interpretive center area and the classrooms, and let the focus be there on that. If one of the larger lodging facilities that has conference of their own, they can piggyback onto our space or the school space. I'm thinking about the League of Oregon Cities conferences. When we go to those, there's always an off-site visit to something. And in this case, any conference that's being at the Surf Sand could have an off-site to the Interpretive Center. I think that's healthy. I think there's kind of a siloed feeling about all the different little spaces that we have in town. And rather, they should be looking at how can we use all the spaces at once and use them cooperatively. And that's where this space gives us the chance to do things that they really can't do. I wouldn't want to take over the idea of what the Surf Sand Ballroom has because they have a really nice, elegant room. I'm not really heading towards that. I think the gymnasium is big. It works great for a farmer's market or a food fair or a Christmas craft bazaar, all those things. Nobody in town that has a space other than the chamber would do something like that. And here we are just offering more square footage. So I don't know.
Well, I remember with so many events, like Gary's wine event, Savor, they really need more spaces. And a lot of the yoga event needed more spaces. So I think of it as being a enhancement and a complement to what's already going on here. I think it's healthy to have more spaces available.
So I guess where I'm headed is the classrooms. The first question is, are we committed to keeping them?
I am. I think you need to have the classrooms to, as Robin says, to complement the gym. It just opens up the opportunity to use that space much more if you have the classrooms.
Well, the classrooms also complement our vision of, and the Native American vision as well, of having a space for learning, storytelling, art. I see so many times the events at, say, the library or the history center are, fantastic programs, but their space is so limited that it's really uncomfortable to the point that not everybody goes. But those kinds of events, I think, fall right in line with our comprehensive plan and the vision of Gina and the Klats of Nehalem. I thought that the presentation by Doug and Dick last night was very inspirational. And I see the classrooms fulfilling a lot of that vision.
And it also just increases the versatility of the whole site. If you maintain the classrooms, you'll be able to use the gym at the same time, hopefully, for people that may not, if they were able to do recreational activities, which, I'm not sure we're all on board with that, but I certainly am. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going with this, but I am totally in favor of keeping the classrooms.
I think I get what you're saying, Brandon, because you could have the pickleballers going at it in one room in the big gym while teaching history in the classroom at the same time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That speaks to the multi-purpose functionality of the whole space. I think that's very important.
And I love the art space. I think that's just perfect for Cannon Beach.
That actually is the one space I would really look forward to, because I have been to so many classes where, whoops, spilled something. And I'm not doing that at the Surf Sand. So there you go.
Well, and it serves the children as well as adults.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it can be a rainy day event or activity.
I guess then after that comes another question to me is, if we're saving the classrooms, are we committed to the restrooms and the space that I proposed and the kitchen area? The kitchen area it could just be another classroom, but I do like the idea of the kitchen.
I particularly like the restrooms. I mean, it's such an obvious place to put public restrooms to serve the whole facility as well as the community. The kitchen area, I think if we're going to have small to medium-sized gatherings and potlucks and welcome the salmon and other kinds of events, I think having a kitchen centrally located, one that's accessible from the street by caterers that may be bringing in pre-prepared foods that may only require warming or heating up for final prep. That's a perfect location. Then you're midway between the small meeting rooms and the larger event center. So I do like it.
Good job.
One thing, we should probably jump on that then, because it'd be nice to have the experts chime in on what a kitchen would look like, what it might need. Obviously, some of them might go extreme, but I would like to hear what's required. I guess what I'm thinking about is the ventilation. If we have a grill system, we're going to be ventilating it up through the roof. And since we're working on the roof as soon as possible, maybe that's a concept we need to address before they start tearing up the roof.
The restrooms need ventilation too.
And there's going to be some plumbing venting.
So there'll be a lot of work done on that end, and that's the time to do it.
Yeah.
One thing that we're not there yet, but we need to be thinking about how and whom will manage this facility, especially with all the various activities and scheduling of events, and to the extent that there is recreation going on and there's equipment for that. There's moving tables and chairs and arranging for all the different types of activities. I don't see city staff doing that at all. So I think, well, we should all be thinking about various ideas of contracting it out, nonprofit 501c3 organization. I don't know what other ideas may be out there, but we don't want to get so far along and say, oh,
Yeah.
who's going to do this? Who's going to keep it clean and up and schedule and there may be some things you need to charge a fee for. Who's going to collect that? Who's going to do promotion? Anyway, just don't lose sight of that as I get excited about building and making projects and things like that, but it does have to ultimately be operated within our resources and our ability to actually perform.
I totally agree, Mike. I also get excited about the building part of it. I did put in my supporting documents. There is some comment on an idea for a 501c3 type management system, again, for discussion. But I do think we kind of have to have our vision of what we want the place to look like and function like before we can have the discussion of how we want to manage it, because the managing is probably going to alter the functioning parts. So we're going to have a little catch-22 going on until we hammer out both of them. But yes, we definitely need to make sure that's not set aside until for later. That is part of this.
Yeah, and I think Bruce kind of couched this work session as the next steps. And certainly this is, I think, a great beginning of those next steps. We need to reach an agreement with the function or the multifunction of the various rooms and their location. And I like the fact that you laid out a suggestion for that. And we're going to need that, and how we would anticipate utilizing the gymnasium so that we can then specify to our architectural engineering firm really where we want things laid out. We can look to them for their experience and expertise on how best to utilize that space. And they may have better suggestions, but we need to have a starting point to say this is our vision of where we're going and looking at it in a phased construction process.
Definitely, especially for the mechanicals.
Yeah, I just don't like putting things in and then tearing them out. You had a different idea later.
Well, the one thing that I have not gone into a whole lot of remodeling type of idea, thinking that we need to live in the space for a while before you really consider dramatic remodeling. If they do, you know, that's quite a ways down the road. So, yeah, especially in the gym room.
Well, there's, you know, the whole parking, what's the code or the law actually require of us? And what is required of the firewall, required of sprinkler systems, all those kind of details that we can get help on making those determinations once we know how we'd like to use this space.
Yeah. That and the southern window walls and the seismic kind of aspect of them.
Right.
I just want to relate the fact that when I was in school there, those damn window walls were so uncomfortable. Because everybody who sat on that side of the classroom either sweltered in the sun or froze in the winter. And I remember one Mr. Nyberg in 5th grade, we rotated.
Oh, everybody got
Literally,
their
because it was that
chance.
uncomfortable.
That's a rotisserie.
Yep. So,
Things are built a little better now.
and it would be nice if that whole facade was the designed facade into something. It's a pretty dull, flat space, but you know, with nice windows and doors and something like that, we could create a better space.
Yeah, you're being kind. It's just ugly. You know, and I know all of you that grew up here and went to school there just love the Quonset hut, but I'd sure be open to some architectural suggestions to make it a little more attractive. And maybe things like the stork on the chimney at the chamber and those sorts of things, maybe a little, I don't know, that big flat arch, you know, it's what you first see. And the busted window, of course, that'd be taken care of. Those rickety old fire escapes. I'm not sure what the code requires. I guess they are required, but surely something be done to make that more attractive. I did kind of like the idea of opening that up. So and I think what I heard you say, Sam, was a balcony out there, which would maybe become part of the fire escape. Open that up. I think that's an interesting idea to do something with that big flat blank wall, because I don't think it's attractive when you drive into town and here's what is that, you know? So you know, we could use some architectural design help on really the exterior all the way around, I think.
I agree, and I didn't want to overwhelm everybody, but I have a lot of ideas. So when we get to committing to what we're using it for, I think there's definitely some capability to make the 2 end walls much more attractive. We have to remember that the structure of the building is the dome, and the end walls are literally not load bearing. Well, they're just end walls. So there's some fun there that we could do with those.
I think there's a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah. And then there's some other ideas I have for the roof, but we can get to that later. That's detail-y stuff.
Okay, now I may not agree with all your ideas, Sam. So
I hope so. Because I get overwhelmed sometimes myself.
all right, well, good presentation.
Yes, very good.
We need to. Next,
When we're talking about steps, it sounds like there's a lot of support for what you suggest. I think that we need to have that vetted by an architect, engineer. Because I'm looking at, I got some questions about accessibility and some other code issues. And also whether or not the functions that we're talking about can work in a particular space. So a possibility then would be to get an architect in and have them do a code review and just an overall review on the plan.
okay,
But I mean, I'm just making that as a suggestion. If we're going forward with this plan, I think we need somebody to say, yes, it can work, or no, it can't work, or these areas are problem areas.
and find out some more of the specifics. So that we
Sure.
know which-
Yeah.
And then after that, we could reconfigure as needed
Mhm.
and present it to the public so we get public feedback.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, if we, just as a staff and council, were able to sit down with the engineering architectural firm, ZCS, and go through this that Sam just did with our adding our own comments as a basis for them to then begin to look at what is necessary, what can be done, can't be done, like Bruce was suggesting. But it start that collaborative process with the firm we select.
So what architect are you looking at? Or would this be the architect that the city would choose to do the overall concept? Or is this somebody that we would ask just to take a look at it and see if we can do some of these things?
We can do it either way, Nancy. Usually when you start with an architect, you kind of hope that you'll be able to go ahead and carry it through so you don't have a learning curve with the next group and they might have some different ideas. So I think we would have to write a scope that says that this is our concept and we would like you to develop it and then tell us about what if any issues you see with this particular layout and what are some suggested options. And, one of the things I'm thinking is that I'm not sure if you have a building that is the gym that has a particular use, and then you've got the classrooms, and then the restrooms are in a different building for the gym than in the gym. I don't know if that's a problem or not, because we do have the issue with the different uses. And then also some code issues with the space on the north
Yeah,
for accessibility.
one of the things they said was if you connect those two buildings, they're considered one. So that might address that issue, Bruce. I'm not sure.
I don't know, well, I'm not sure, Mike, because they're definitely two different building classes.
Right.
And if you connect them, they become one class, and it's the most restrictive, which would be assembly. So anyway, I'm not sure, but that's why we have somebody come in on it. But I think that the intent was to treat them as two buildings. That's why you have a firewall. But again, I'm not an expert, but that's the kind of thing, the information that we would get.
Is it your intention, Bruce, to work with the same firm that we already have worked with?
At this point, I think we need to go out for proposals for all architectural firms that might be interested. That's a 90-day process, unless we're looking to do just a code review. That would be a much smaller scope.
I see. Could you enhance that to include, beyond code, to also possibly look at some structural issues for things like the Sam's proposal with the bathroom and, you
Yeah.
know, ultimately, my mind just keeps going to where we're gonna have to dig.
Right, right. And my thought, again, I gave two options. My thought would be we go through the whole process so that when we hand this to somebody, they're the ones that are going to be at the end of it doing construction administration. So they solve all the problems, everything going through, rather than get a review and then somebody else might have another opinion. And we would still eventually have to do the 90-day process to get an architect, engineer to develop the design drawings. So we might as well go ahead and do it right in the beginning. And then you would have points where you could terminate the contract along. You don't have to go ahead and pay them the full fee. But you say the first thing is the code review. The next thing would be, a schematic design, which would have more details on each one of these spaces in there. That kind of thing.
Okay, I'm certainly supportive. If we just need to get a code review, that's fine. I kind of wanted to get an idea of how you saw the process. Thank you. And just to say that I felt good about that company that we had worked with initially.
Mhm. Yes, they're doing the roof work for us now. But again, at some point we have to do the 90-day process. That's why I'm suggesting we do it up front. But if you're in a hurry, we could get a code review. And I don't think the fee would be that high, and I can probably, authorize that just to move forward.
My sense would be to go with the code review,
Mhm.
because I think there's a decision-making process in between knowing what we can do and what we can't do before we have the completed vision
Mhm.
that an architect would move forward. So let me just say, we find out that we can't do the restrooms, or they have to be connected to the gym, just as an example. That's a total rethink of how the facilities work. That means if we have an architect on board, that means they're going to be waiting while we go through public hearings, and I'm sure they don't mind waiting, but it just means this whole time we're also doing roofing. I think it would be better to see if we could get something answered quicker so that we can then turn around the decision of the vision, so that when we talk to an architect, we have a very clear, distinct, here we go, this is what we want.
Yes. The other side of that is if they're doing a code review, they're going to tell you where your problems are. But if you have an architect that's going to do your design, they can give you potential solutions and you're already on your way. Unless we want to do all the design work. I'm good either way.
Well, I certainly think that we would need an architect at some point. I think, to work with some initial concepts to begin with is fine, but sooner or later, I would say sooner, we will definitely need an architect.
But hasn't ZCS already taken a look at this from a code perspective and making their estimates of what we might be exposed to for each of the building complexes? It seems that we might be more efficient if we still did the code determination or assessment first before we make with our proposed layout, something along the lines of what Sam just went through.
Mhm.
With this utilization, what's our exposure, what are our requirements to meet code? Because they've already done that once without knowing how we're going to use it. They already said, well, these are classrooms, this is a gymnasium, here's your restrooms. They've pretty well done a lot of the work to come up with the estimates for a cost. So I think we'd be money ahead to ask them to take a look at this particular layout, which is a little different than what's there, and give us an assessment on our code requirements and tell us, well, you know, like Sam says, well, you can't put the kitchen there, or, you know, you got to have extra restrooms, so that we can then put that into our thinking and maybe revisit this. Then with that information, go out for bids with an architectural engineering firm, because now we know what this layout and its use is going to be. And we've already addressed whether we potentially can meet the code with that layout.
I think that I don't know if there's that many issues that need to be addressed. I know that there was a $500,000 allowance to replace the spaces around the north end of the gym. I know that there were restrooms allowances put into the gym and the classrooms. And another thing too, Sam, I think that you were talking about the south wall for seismic. I think the north wall has to be some work too. So it'll be both of those. Yeah, I don't even know how long it would take them to go ahead and take a look at a couple of the things as far as, you know, can you do this? Can you do this? But again, I think that if they're going to make a decision, for example, can we put the kitchen in, is it space one, Sam? Space one? Then we probably need to have some sort of a design for them to evaluate, unless you want them to design the kitchen, and they would do it with input. But then now we're starting to get into design. So just tell me which way you want to go. I think that the ZCS proposal would be relatively low, which would be something I could authorize.
Well, even on the kitchen, well, you're right, it can be low enough that we probably don't have to go out. But we don't have to have a complete final design for a kitchen and a full layout for them to determine what our code requirements are for a kitchen in that size of facility in that application. So I think they wouldn't take near as much time or cost us near as much if we were to stick with them for the code evaluation, because I think basically they've done a lot of it already. And we have a chance to go out with our request for quotes from other engineering sources, which I think we're obligated to do. And they can still be one of the bidders. So, yeah, I guess
Okay,
we ought to stick with them for the code. And when we get into design and architecture, then we go out for bid.
Okay, so that's where everybody wants to go on the code review?
I like that. I like what you're saying.
Okay. I will talk to ZCS and get a proposal from them.
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead, Brendan.
is it ZCS?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, write that down.
Yeah, I remember because the guy's name is Zach. I don't know if that was his name or not, but that's how he's.
Scott, is that something like that?
Right?
I have a question about the food pantry. Is that something that's up for discussion at this point?
To me, it always has been. The thought so far, because we were looking at the gym and the classrooms, obviously, but I think at a minimum, we need to make the improvements to the food pantry, even if it remains in place, or we start looking at some other options. But I don't think we can do all this work around it and not take care of the issues at the food pantry.
Yes,
So, yeah.
that's my concern exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for articulating that.
Oh,
I'm not in support of having them go elsewhere. I'd like them to remain there, but it's clear that that building that they're in is desperately in need of work.
Yeah, and I think that we'll probably have to do that sooner rather than later. There's just some things that need to be taken care of. So we'll be talking about that at budget time.
Okay, so is your feeling that you'd like to treat it as a completely separate structure and its own entity? and we just deal with it that way? Or should we discuss it as something that's inclusive with the rest of the CBE project?
There's two ways to look at it, Brandon. One is that we incorporate it in. And then, there may be, ties to the other facilities. At which time it would push the improvements possibly for the food pantry out until the schedule for the rest of the space. Or we can make the improvements that need to be, or the repairs that need to be done, and not wait for it. And then if there are any ties that we put in or any architectural treatments or something, we can always come back and do that later.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that we shouldn't, we should take care of it and not make them wait for all the other work that's going to be done on the site.
I completely agree.
So I guess my answer to your question is, I see it as a separate project.
Okay, and I'd just like the other counselors to weigh in. So if to find out whether there's a consensus on this.
I had a discussion with a food pantry person, and one of the ideas that I came up with while talking to them after the fact was that once we get the roof pretty well established on the classrooms, those spaces would be very usable for them to move out so that the food pantry could be upgraded better without having to try and do their function at the same time that we're repairing the building and, in plastic and, half the room and that kind of stuff. That's a little bit of a domino thing, but it would give them the chance to have a better building. And that we could also discuss then what are the repairs that we need and whether we want to go beyond just repairing to making it actually look like a better building. That
I'm
fits,
fully in support of that. I just don't want.
fits within the whole concept of the site.
Do we know what improvements need to be made in the food pantry? Or could that be part of the architects looking at it as, as he's looking, they're looking at the code for the other part of the building? Can they look at that building and say, these are the repairs and improvements that need to be made on the food pantry?
Yes, we could ask them. Not sure if we don't know already what we think needs to be done. But if there's anything that's over and above our capabilities, we would certainly ask them.
It'd probably be easier to list what doesn't need to be done there.
Yeah,
Or building.
weren't they a building or a set of buildings that were relocated?
They were prefab temporary buildings after the 64 Sonata.
Okay.
And then
And yes, I will probably ask the architects and engineers to look at it because I'm not sure what kind of modifications you can make to a prefab building because it has an entirely different building code. So we will include that in. That's a good suggestion.
One thought while we were earlier talking about the kitchen, would anybody have any objection to my asking Bob Neroni and Ira, what's his name down at the conference center, to give us some input on what a kitchen they think would be like?
That'd be great.
Okay,
Be helpful.
okay, I'll contact them and just have them give me some bullet points.
I have a question on the food bank. I know we took over the lease from the school district, but what I'm not clear on is what our ongoing obligations are, or if any, to maintain, improve, continue the building itself. And I'm just trying to recall the lease. I thought it would just basically lease you the building and the land and that was it. But I don't know. Does anybody know? First of all, I'm just looking for legally, what do we need to do? What have we agreed to do? I'm not asking what council would like to do in the future, but just where are we right now? What is our obligation?
We'll get copies of the lease out to you all tomorrow, so you can see it. It's a pretty simple lease.
Yeah, that's why I recall it being very simple. I don't recall it having a lot to do about, rebuilding it or remodeling it for them. So it's something that's got to be addressed.
Yeah, I think that we just took over or essentially absorbed the lease that they had. And I don't know what kind of work was anticipated while it was still with the school board. So it may be silent.
Yeah, I kind of think it is. So something we got to look at.
Yeah, I bet the school board was just hoping it would fall down.
Mhm.
Okay, we got some stuff to do. Any last comments on this topic? My throat's giving out, so let's go to good of the order. At that point, I was thinking I was going to bring up the elk issue. Henry sent me a specific request as the 5 mayors were going to try and get together and talk about this, and he and Jay at Seaside have been on this council or committee or whatever it is. But then he sent out this to everybody. So if you want to.
I just received it also.
Yeah.
I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sam.
I think we should all read through it clearly. It looks mostly like it's education, signage, stuff like that. I have no initial problem. I just want to do a little more research because I know Warrenton is talking about culling, and I would not approve that. So.
Yeah, I took a look at it and just thought, I don't think we have the issue, and I don't want to be compelled to follow along with a program that other mayors and towns want to do for their particular issues. I'd be much more in favor of dealing with any issues we have ourselves, rather than getting into a coalition and looking for state funds. And I suspected the culling might be part of it. So anyway, I'm not, from my perspective, I'm not supportive of joining that the group, whatever they want to call themselves. So
Yeah, each community has its own flavor of what they feel that this is a problem. Gearhart has their understanding of the issue, and a lot of it has to do with the golf course. I think here we have a different situation, so I agree with you, Mike.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we have to do something here, some signage and promotion of, being careful with elk, because it seems to be getting to be a problem, but I'm not sure we need to go as far as what they're proposing.
Okay. Nobody has any other direction. I will contact Henry and just kind of back out. Okay. Anybody else?
Well, just on that, I was going to say, based on what I think Nancy just said, we may want to kind of watch what they're doing, but there's really 4 areas where elk tend to attract a crowd. One's Les Shirley, City Park, the Sunset Turnaround intersection. I said 4, didn't I? Oh, my yard.
My front yard.
More.
But I thought a sign of some kind educating, don't feed the wildlife. They are wild animals. Don't get too close. Keep your dogs away. At the parks where they're people congregate, that elk tend to congregate, and might be a smart thing to do. But
Yeah.
I don't feel an urgency to do that. I certainly don't feel an urgency to join forces along the North Coast to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're talking mostly about surveys, assisting educational, elk safety guidance, digital tourism focus, whatever that means. Visitor association, education. Compliance officer to work with vacation rentals. I don't know what that means. I'll read through this a little more. Again, I was uncomfortable just with my first read, so.
It's not too hard to say no.
I'll back out of it.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
I know that we have had funding for the school through the county. I was wondering if maybe the different cities could get together to find out more about a commitment from the county to continue those funds. I think that there would be more strength in numbers, but I do think that it would be a shame to lose that funding.
Yeah, I agree. Before COVID, and before all this happened, when the tax was on the ballot and all that kind of stuff, I had the five of us met, the five mayors, and the comment was made, and I can't remember who made it, but it says if they ever change it, they got five mayors in their face.
Can we make
So
it clear?
yeah, what you're saying is just to make that ahead of time.
Yeah, proactive, yeah.
And I've already asked the county administrator, told him about our project, and he says he's looking at what can be done. Because their ordinance does say that there's no guarantee that it will continue.
Yeah.
So we've also made that approach to staff. I think that as far as the decision makers, it is a stronger situation coming from councils to their commission. But like I said, we're already started the discussion.
And I could, at some point, I can get the mayors together and we can go sit in Mark's office and give him a what for, because we all know him as a previous mayor. So that might work. We'll see.
Okay.
Okay. Any other good of the order?
Is there, we won't be having meetings on this until, well, I can give you an update before, once we see the proposal, but as far as having any more meetings, it would be after the evaluation is done?
Probably.
Or do we try to schedule something sooner?
No, I don't see any reason to right now until we have some more information. Yeah. If everybody is really comfortable with moving forward with what I presented, and it sounds like that, let's get some facts back before we have another discussion. I would invite that anybody out there that's listening, if you have comments, go ahead and send them in. The more comments, the more information we have. So if you read through things or what you heard tonight, that's fine. We will put it in our list and we'll read them and we'll take them to heart. So thank you.
When we talked to Doug and Dick last night, we kind of encouraged them to think we would be talking to them again.
Oh, yeah.
What would you think that it would be after we get this information?
Yeah, because this is kind of,
okay.
This is kind of the kind of factual information that could change some of the vision.
Okay.
When we get that kind of clarity, then we can go back to the GINA group, the tribe, and the art group or whatever, Trovan Art, because they're going to want to use some of this and things like that, and ask for, okay, does this fit your concept that you brought to us earlier? And if we give positive and negative feedback, well, we'll figure out at that point. Okay. That's for the good of the order. Nope. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Very productive.
Yes, good job.